Hello, friends, subscribers, and colleagues. This is the Platinum Business Break or the Platinum Business Podcast. And today's episode is sponsored by Platinum Training Technologies, the premier training, learning, and coaching platform for business. All right, we're going to jump right in. This one is called The Myth of Time Management. That's probably going to get some of your attention. You know, there's hundreds of books out there on time management. And I am convinced that you can't manage time. And I'm going to explain why here in just a minute in the episode. Today's episode is The Myth of Time Management. It's Season 3, Episode 2, and I hope you enjoy it. We're going to jump right in. January 17th is the date when most people finally give up on their resolutions that they made on January 1st. That's from several studies that I found, and that's actually pretty sad. That's not even 3 weeks. Now, I know we hear, hey, it takes 3 weeks to form a habit. It's actually more like 66 days. But the biggest reason I hear that people give up on their resolutions is it's time. You know, I don't have time. And if you go back to the podcast I did on New Year's Day, you know, I talk about a resolution versus a resolution, where a revolution is a radical change. And my favorite quote from Jim Rohn, discipline weighs ounces and regret weighs tons. All right, so with that, you know, we just say, hey, there's no time. We just don't have any time. You know, I'm busy at work and too many meetings, and I can't eat right, so I got to stop by and get some fast food. I don't have time to exercise. I'm so tired. Okay, those are all excuses, and it's because you think you don't have any time, but you actually do. And again, it's not really time management. It's really more lifestyle or what I call productivity management. So the myth of time management. Here we go. Again, I've read tons of books on this. And I'm actually going to reference a book that talks about time management, but it gives some pretty good tips. So I'm going to show you that later. So the myth of time management, time is passing, whether we want it to or not. Right now I can hear the click of the clock that's on the wall to my right. So time is passing. The question is, what do you do with your time, right? So really what we're talking about is lifestyle management, or really what I like to think is being productive. I want to be productive. So if I could look back during a week and go, hey, I was actually productive. I actually did something. Isn't that pretty cool? That's what I want to try to do. All right, I'm going to tell you about the parable of the marbles. And I got this from a book called Leadership Gold by John Maxwell, my friend and mentor, one of my favorite books. And this is from the chapter on, he calls time management, but he goes on to say there's no such thing as time management. And I'm going to do a little old school and read this to you. But the cool thing about this is a story that he told. It was actually by a guy named Jeffrey Davis. And basically what it is, it's a gentleman who's talking like on a ham radio, those of you who know what that is. And he's talking to his friends about the passage of time. And he was talking about, you know, the 1,000 marbles parable. And so, and I'm going to quote here, he said, the gentleman, again, this was Jeffrey Davis, he wrote, I was intrigued and stopped to listen and say what he had to say. Well, Tom, it sure sounds like you're busy with your job, you know, et cetera, et cetera. He said, let me tell you something, Tom. And this helps me keep a good perspective on my own priorities. That's called the theory or parable of 1,000 marbles. You see, I sat down one day and did a little arithmetic. The average person lives about 75 years. I know some live more and some live less, but on average, folks live about 75 years. Now, I multiplied the 75 times 52, and I came up with 3,900, which is the number of Saturdays or weeks we each have left in our entire life. So stick with me. He said, I'm getting to the important part. He said, it took me until I was 55 years old to think about this in detail. And by that time, I had lived through over 2,800 Saturdays. I got to thinking if I lived to be 75, I only had about 1,000 left to live. Now, that's pretty sobering if you could actually have a visual, which you can see here on the screen. Hey, it's just, you know, it's how many weeks do you have left on average? So I went to the toy store, bought up all the marbles. Anyway, long story short is he bought up all the marbles. And every Saturday, he would take one out, throw it away, or put it into a different jar. And he said, this morning, I took the very last marble out of the container. And I figure if I make it until next Saturday, they've been given a little extra time or a gift. That's one thing that we can all use is a little more time. So the cool thing about that, I think, is, you know, if you start looking at your time as a visual or the time you have left, and if you put a marble for every day you have, well, you know, I got about a little over 1,000 marbles left based on that parable. So I've done, and this is actually the picture you see is my marble jar. So every Sunday, and that's my kind of favorite day, I'm going to take one out, put it in the jar next to me. And I'm going to look at that marble, like the one I have here. You can see the marble here. I don't know if you can see it there on camera. But I'm going to take this marble and I'm going to think, did I get all the stuff that I wanted to do this week? Was I productive? Did I make a difference in people's lives? Really, those are the big questions. And one of your goals may be, hey, I want to binge watch the latest HBO special. If that was your goal, that's fine. But did you do it? So that's all I'm saying. So every week, were you productive? Now, I'm going to jump in and give a couple of thoughts and tips and tricks on how we could be more productive. And again, I'm going to call this time management, just for ease and simplicity. So one of my favorite books is by a gentleman named Dan Kennedy. And if you know who he is, I mean, he's a character. I like him a lot. I like his style. He's got a series of books called the No BS, whatever. It's kind of like, X for Dummies. That's kind of his shtick. So it's the No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs by Dan Kennedy, and it's really a great read. So if you don't have it, pick it up. It's not very expensive. It's on paperback. You can also get it on Kindle or Audible, and it's pretty cool. So really what he talks about is you have to assign what you're worth. Are you worth X an hour? And that assigning that dollar amount kind of helps you decide, is whatever you're looking at worth your time? And when you start putting a dollar value on your time, that's pretty significant. So the example here that I went through is, let's say, just for grins, you want to make $200,000 a year, or you think you're worth $200,000 a year. You look at the average time someone works at a job. Now, this is not all time. This is just work time. So the math kind of works out to about $113 an hour. Now, I did that exercise for myself, and I think I'm worth a lot more than that. So I won't tell you what my number is, but my number is significantly higher. And I look at that and I go, that's how I decide whether I'm going to do something. Is this hour that I'm going to spend getting my oil changed, is it better if I do it myself, or do I just go somewhere and get it done? And while I'm waiting in the waiting room for that 30 or 40 minutes or an hour or so, maybe I'm reading a book, answering emails, so I'm more productive. All right, does that make sense? I hope so. So in the book, and I'm going to kind of a real high level thing here, but Dan Kennedy goes over several things, and I want to share my favorites with you. First one is the time vampires. All right, this is my favorite. And there's actually, to me, there's 4 time vampires. There's people, email, texts, and meetings. And I think we can all agree that those 4 things can take up the most of our time, especially in a business environment, especially those who have gone back to the office and are now, punching the clock, or if you're back in an office environment, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. This is especially important. But this also applies if you're working remote. You could still have the same thing happen to you in a remote environment. So let's talk about people. And again, people can be, to me, one of the most biggest areas of time wasting. Typically, it's in an office environment. It's the person that pops by your desk and says, hey, he's got a joke for you, or some office gossip, or hey, do you have a minute? And the problem with that is people, if you let them infringe in your time, and again, you got to look at that dollar value you assign. And when you look at that person that's popped in your door, your office, or a cubicle, and they're wasting your time, you need to think about that dollar value, how much time, how much value, how much productivity they're wasting. Now, some of us, we don't have that luxury. Our jobs are different. I get it. If you're customer service, it's your job to be interrupted. But I'm just talking about, just in general, people who aren't your normal, coworker, or your normal course of business. Someone who comes in and wastes your time. So people are the biggest thing. The people who come in and just ask questions, or hey, do you have a minute? Or the same person who comes back and they want you to solve all their problems. They can't solve any problems. They come to you. So quit solving their problems. Just say no. All right. So people are one of the biggest time vampires I think that there are. You've got to get them out of your life. And as Dan Kennedy says, drive that stake through their heart, get rid of them. All right. The next one is email. Oh, this is the killer. How many of you can leave your desk or come back from a weekend and there's hundreds of emails? That is the most frustrating thing. That is one of the biggest, if not the biggest time eater, the time vampires. And the thing was with email, it's great for record keeping and keeping a paper trail. But there's a couple of things about email that bother me. One, email is not instant messaging. If someone emails you, they say, call me, or hey, can we talk about this? That to me, that's just very annoying. The other thing about email is if you are on a big email and someone hits the dreaded reply to all, you don't have to reply to all. It's not necessary. Don't do it. Just reply to the person who started the conversation, if it's even pertinent. Here's my other rule of thumb. If someone sends me an email and I'm in the to, like to me, okay, I'm going to probably pay more attention. But if I'm carbon copied, I'm just saying, oh, that's just to keep me in the loop. And that's another thing. Don't send just to keep you in the loop emails unless you are asked to do so. If people want to know, they'll, if something blows up, you can catch them up. You have to give them a play-by-play and send every email. Now, look, I'm guilty of all this that I'm talking about. Okay, now try not to do it. All right, so email, you got to get a handle on the email. The other thing is text. Now, again, we're all, working in an office environment or at home. Texts are still a problem. Whether it's a coworker, even someone who, family member or friend, texts, and technically texts are instant messaging, but you don't have to respond. In fact, take that little, and I think every phone, if you go to the setup where it has under the control panel, it says something about messages read. You can turn off that feature so they don't know whether you've read the message or not. It just says delivered. So keep them guessing. Okay, you're not under any obligation to immediately return a text, unless it's one of your kids or a sick family member, and you're checking in on them, or it's your kid. Say, I'm out of gas, I'm on the side. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people sending you jokes and funny pictures and memes, and that constantly interrupt your day, right? So texts are another area, and the last ones are meetings. Oh my gosh. Meetings are also terrible, especially if you're in a company or company culture where you're in meetings all day long. Find another job. That is bad. You shouldn't be in very few meetings, maybe one or two a week. Most of the meetings that I've been in my career, we could have solved things through email. We didn't have to have a meeting. So this is a couple of rules of thumb, and I think it's Elon Musk. He said, if you go to a meeting at Tesla and you're sitting there and it provides no value, you're free to walk out. I love that. Okay. Again, a lot of us can't do that. We have to play the game. But all meetings should, at the very least, start on time and stop on time. They should have an agenda. They should have a goal. In fact, there should be a meeting before the meeting, and this is a John Maxwell comment, that who's ever in charge of the meeting, let's really make sure it's necessary, and let's really decide who we're going to pull out from a department or kill their time for the day just to be in this meeting. If it's not critical, do it by email. But we got to get a control on our meetings. Meetings are also killing us. So people, text, email, and meetings, those are the biggest time vampires. So leaders, managers, business owners, please help your people out. They'll be so much more productive if you can minimize all of that for them. Okay? All right. Number two hint that I got from the Dan Kennedy book was lists. Whether they're checklists, to-do lists, there's a million different ways to do it, but just have a list of the things I got to get done today, things that I got to get done this week. And again, less is more. If you have too many, you won't get anything done. So it's kind of the 80-20 rule. 20% of the tasks or activities that have 80% of the impact, that's what you got to get done. Okay. So make use of lists. They're very, very helpful. And, and I used to keep a calendar, and heck with it. I just have a list, and it's a revolving list. I have a new list every day, and some things come off, some things go on, but it just kind of keeps you mentally organized of what's priority. Okay, block your time. I think this is one of the most underutilized techniques. I've done this in past lives and do this all the time. So if you have a calendar, and a lot of us are in Microsoft, some sort of an office suite with a company, or maybe if you're self-employed, but block time on your calendar, and you actually, block it, call it productivity time. And hopefully no one will schedule meetings. And, I think in Microsoft Outlook, you could put out of office or busy or not available. Make sure you are not available. Just say no. All right. Block time out for you to get things done. And just for example, so with block your time, for example, let's say, just to be productive, if you're in an office environment, between 7:30 and 9 a.m., check email and respond. So that's your time to do that. Now, 9 a.m. to 11:30, that's productive time. That means turn off your email, put your phone on do not disturb, put your cell phone on airplane mode or whatever. That should be, and close your door or hang a sign outside your cubicle, do not disturb. That is your productive time. Studies show once you're interrupted, it takes you 30 minutes to get back into the zone. Okay, so allow yourself that, at 2.5 hours to get stuff done. Then right before lunch, you want to check voicemail. And just check voicemail, whether it's your phone or your office phone. And then go to lunch. Okay, unwind, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever your company policy, your preference is. But when you come back, you want to return the phone calls. You want to check emails and send responses. So you have kind of 2 blocks during the day that you're checking email, checking voicemail, and responding. And then you go back to 2:30 to 5 p.m. productive time. Now, if you think about that, I mean, look, I'm blocking out, 2.5 hours, that's 5 hours. So really, you're only working 5 hours a day, really working. So apply that back to the very first thing I talked about is what is your time worth? Instead of an 8-hour day, figure it on a 5-hour day and watch that dollar amount increase. So you got 3 hours of potentially unproductive things happening in your work life. And this works in your personal life too, by the way. All right, so you got that, block your time. All right, number 4, minimize unplanned activity. And I call these like popcorn meetings or pop-ins. It's again, hey, you got time for a quick meeting? Or, your boss or someone may say, hey, you got time to jump on a quick Teams call? Or let's jump on a quick Teams call or a Zoom call right after this meeting. Oh my gosh, so you're gonna go from one meeting to the next. And again, if you're virtual, I gotta go to the bathroom. I do not have time to jump on this meeting. So, or that's the person popping in the office. Hey, you got a minute? Or hey, can I talk to you? No. Just say, no, I am busy. I don't have time to talk. Close the door. Get out of here. Okay, so minimize unplanned activity. Number 5, profit from odd lot or, downtime. So again, that could be windshield time on the way to work or on the way back. That could be while you're getting your oil changed. That could be while you're at the gym. So any downtime, take advantage of listening to a podcast like this one, or maybe listening to an audiobook, or maybe, you can return some phone calls. And I used to do that a lot when I was for a couple companies. I had a long commute, or even if I'm traveling on the road, I will return phone calls and do all my phone business. Again, obviously hands-free, we want to be safe, but that helps a lot with the time, okay? So all I'm saying on that is make use of downtime and you can be more productive. All right, so there's a few strategies. And, number 1 is get lost. I love that graphic. It's a little kid hiding behind the blinds. If they can't find you, they can't interrupt you. So what does get lost mean? Well, if obviously you're in an office, that means close your door. Maybe leave, go find a quiet area. Maybe you go down the street to the Starbucks. I don't know. Just get lost. Or if you're digitally, you can get lost digitally. That means turn off your email, turn off your phone, and mark unavailable. Get lost. Don't be available for someone to interrupt you. Okay, the second one is don't answer the phone. Turn that phone off. Put it on do not disturb. Put it on airplane mode. Right. Number 3, get a grip on email, texts, and meetings. And we talked about that previously. That is going to help you with being more productive. Therefore, it automatically manages your time for you because you can't. Time is going to pass on regardless. All right. So, number 4, and before I forget, number 4, this is my favorite. Set the timer on the bomb. Now, this is a Dan Kennedy thing. He actually has a timer somewhat like this. If he has a meeting with someone, he sets the timer. When that bell goes off, I think it's a little explosion. He ushers you to the door. We're done. You've had your 20 or 30 minutes. And he's very militant about that. If I could find one of those, I'm going to get one because I think that is really cool. So if you do have meetings, start time, stop time, whether it's a group meeting or individual meeting, follow the start time, stop time. And then be busy, number 5, be busy and be obvious about it. Now, the cool thing about this is I knew a guy worked for a distributor and he worked in the warehouse, I worked in the office. And, I know he wasn't working, but every day he was walking around with a clipboard stuffed full of paper, and he had a pen or pencil in his ear, and every once in a while he would stop and he'd kind of look around. He'd have a bothered look on his face. He'd get the clipboard, he'd write something down, they'd scurry off. And even the bosses or managers, they were afraid to ask him what he was doing because he looked so busy. Okay, so no one bothered him. So if you look busy and have a determined look on your face, people won't bother you. Okay, I think that's pretty funny. So anyway, let's go back to marbles. So again, this week, what did you do? How were you productive? So I challenge you to start some of these things if you can. Now, again, not all of us can do this because of our jobs, but if you put some of these in practice, I promise you will have more productive weeks. So how many weeks do you have left? And how do you want to spend those weeks? Is it in meetings or emails or problems, or do you want to be productive? Because being productive is fun. And you know what I'm talking about. If you have a block of time, or if you have something, like on a Saturday, it's like, you wake up, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then you get busy. And then you clean out the garage and you get a bunch of stuff done. Man, you feel so good. Or if you're at work and you knock out a lot of things in one day, oh my gosh, that is the best feeling in the world. So you know what I'm talking about. So let's be productive. Let's get stuff done, okay? All right, so that is it. That is season 3, episode number 2. That is the myth of time management, and I hope you enjoyed it. And by the way, if you are interested in some training, we could actually do maybe a lunch and learn or mastermind group or seminar on this topic for your team, and we'd love to do that. So if you like what you heard, reach out to us, subscribe to our channel, and we're going to try to drop these podcasts and vidcasts more often, more than we did last year. We got slacked last year, but this year we're going to try to pick it up. Anyway, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening. Anyway, we will see you next time. Bye.